Major funding for these broadcasts is made possible by grants from New York Community Bank, Capital One Bank, Perfect Building Maintenance, Chase Commercial Term Lending, M&T Bank, Genova Burns. Additional support is provided by AKA Hotels, Corman Communities, Aerial Property Advisors, AVR Realty Company, Bank of America Merrill Lynch, Bank Leumi USA, Briarwood Organization, CBRE, Citizens Bank, Collins Building Services, Connect One Bank, CPEX Real Estate Services, Cushman & Wakefield, DDG, Dime Savings Bank of Williamsburg, Douglaston Development, Levine Builders, Fisher Brothers, First Nationwide Title Agency, Flushing Bank, Friedman, Handler Real Estate Organization, HAP Investments, Investors Bank, James D. Kuhn Real Estate Center at Syracuse University, Kilroy Architectural Windows, New York's Window Company, Madison Realty Capital, Matone Group, Mercantile Commerce Bank, Meridian Capital Group, New Banks, Optimum Window Manufacturing Corp., People's United Bank, Rosewood Realty Group, SJP Properties, Sterling National Bank, Stonehenge Partners, TD Bank, Terra CRG, The Continuum Company, The Moynihan Group, and These Friends.
Oh, Crystal Apple, where are we going to be in 2016? Are condos going to sell? Is there going to be affordable housing? How's all the market going to be there? Crystal Apple, tell me. You say, ask these leaders today to provide their insight on where they see 2016. So I'm lucky to have a distinguished group, including Joseph Matone, the chairman, the CEO of the Matone Organization.
Thank you, Mr. Stoller.
Okay. Vincent Rizzo, the chairman and the CEO of the Briarwood Organization. Ian Bruce Eichner, the chairman and CEO of the Continuum Organization. And last but not least, the optimist of all times, my dear friend Ophir Yardeni, who is the chairman of Stonehenge Partners.
Thank you.
So, Ophir, positive, negative, weak, good, bad? How do you see the year?
I think it's going to be all of the above. Good, bad, fantastic, ugly.
Wait a second. I hear good, bad.
It depends on which segment and which market you're talking.
So we have, okay, it's a good comment. We have Mr. Matone, who is into every aspect, but he has a good portfolio of retail. Mr. Rizzo, who's been one of the major affordable housing people, where it's very difficult to rebuild because of land price. We have Mr. Eichner, who's been in the residential rental and condo buildings, who's building a luxury, beautiful tower on 22nd Street. And we have you, the guy...
Very simple.
Simple, has a couple of apartments, the former tour guide from the IDF,
So it is very, very simple. I thought about it. If I was an owner of land, that I was going to sell land right now, I think that the market stopped. The market is clearly 20–30% down from the peak, and I think the trend will continue that land prices are not going to go to the prices that we had a year ago of $1,000 a square foot.
I hate to disagree with my friend, because I know that my friend Mr. Rizzo had his colleagues and him and I on a phone call a couple of weeks ago, and they were talking to me about land in Lower Manhattan at $500 a foot.
I'm talking about $1,000 a square foot at several of the pieces that were sold in Chelsea or the Upper East Side. These prices are gone. And you're asking me for 2016, not what
I'm
deal
talking
will
2016.
Close. So what you heard a few months ago, it's gone.
Mr. Eichner, are you agreeing with this?
100%. The fact of the matter is that actually I believe that the selling of big ticket items where larger was better, now larger is a death knell. If you have a large scale site to sell, you have no one to buy it because A, the opportunity funds believe that we are late in the game, to use the paradigm that you quoted. If you want to talk about a ball game, you're somewhere between the 8th and the 9th inning in terms of new development. And I agree with Ofer. It's really the market segment that you're in. If you have a $2,400 a foot condo project on the Upper East Side, you'll sell it all day long. If you are unfortunate enough to be one of the $6,000 a foot condominiums in the 53rd to 61st Street corridor, you are mightily challenged.
What about Vinny has done things in the boroughs, Joe's have done in the boroughs. A lot of people are talking that the next great opportunities are in Staten Island or East New York or these emerging neighborhoods. Any thoughts about that? You've been in Jamaica. You were one of the leaders in Jamaica.
Yeah, but Vinny and I looked at the various items together, and I think we come to the conclusion that you can't match the pricing of Manhattan with the outer boroughs in any sense, and that it is also in Manhattan, the way I see pricing, I agree with both of you, by the way. I think the peak has kind of been reached. And the reason for that is also, I think, foreign money coming into New York has, to some degree, been, I think, lessened. I don't feel that the desire to come into safe havens for these investments that we often hear of being funded for purposes of security are quite the same in demand as they were in 15 and maybe even in 2014. I think it's a situation that goes to the economy of, let's say, China not being as vibrant as it was, or Russia, which has its own economic problems today and may not have the excess cash to ship out. So I think those are external forces which are also keeping the pricing down for the year 2016. That's my opinion.
So I work, Mr. Maton, I work with a lot of
Joseph, please.
I work with a lot of foreign institutions.
Yes.
And I believe that 2016, they are going to come even further to invest in the United States.
Right.
If you look at the new purchase of Stuyvesant, one of the most complicated transactions and with history, you have an institution from Canada that is investing close to $2 billion of equity in the transaction in a wonderful asset. This is only in one asset. Then you have the Norwegian fund that is going to invest between $3 to $5 billion just in Manhattan in two transactions. So I believe that the institution, there is separation between individuals than institution. The institution are still going to come to deploy
but the
in the United States.
institutions are buying a certain size project.
They're buying multifamily. They're investing with me. I'm purchasing consistently.
The Canadians have been with you for 20 years.
No, and they will continue. And therefore, I have several other foreigners. If it's from the Middle East, if it's from Europe, they want the safety and the stability. Remember, the economic growth in Europe is zero. The interest rates that they get on their money is zero.
Minus.
It's true, it's minus, they get less. But if you look at the crisis in Greece, in Spain, in Italy, people are concerned in Germany, what's going to happen there, France. So they are still looking in the United States. And I think, and I really believe that with a new administration in Washington, we're going to have a new president, we're going to have a renaissance here, hopefully, depends who will win, and I believe that more institutions will come here and fuel. Condominiums, it's a different market, and it's a different buyer who buys.
My question is, we have an island, and then Manhattan's an island, we have Staten Island, we have Brooklyn, we have other areas. And people believe, and I did a show a couple of months ago about Staten Island with a wheel. And this conceptual idea that the 630-foot wheel, which is going to cost $38, is going to be the same idea as the Empire State Building and the Trade Center. You know, people are going to rush over there. There's this discussion about East New York. You know, it's the last haven of vacant land, okay? You, as I said before, were in Jamaica. You've been in Bayside. Where do you see the boroughs? Where do you see the opportunities?
We were looking at Atlantic Avenue, weren't we?
Yes.
And we were for affordable housing, mind you, and we were paying $30 million. $30 because that was the affordable price per square foot that we thought we could get reimbursed from the city. That was the starting point. It wasn't zero, which in the old days would have enabled the deal to go forward. But there was somebody out there who took it.
Who took it at more than we were willing to pay for it. And we didn't see their purchase price making any sense. Brooklyn is definitely on the upswing. Long Island City, parts of Queens, and that's where the market rate is in the outer boroughs. From the affordable standpoint, we have seen very, very difficult RFPs coming out from the city. And we, among other things, after preparing ourselves to present something to the city on an RFP, decided to call the city and request to back out. It's the first time I've done that in my life, but a lot of these things just don't work anymore. And under the current administration, I think we're going to find it very difficult to continue to build affordable housing.
To circle around, Michael, to the outer boroughs for a minute. So if you go back 5 years, because part of 16 is about where we're coming from. So there are at least three trends. The first trend was that land prices in Manhattan grew to an unsustainable pace, which caused people to need $3,000, $3,500 a foot, numbers that made no sense. Rents in Manhattan, in many places, are north of $80 a square foot. That drove an awful lot of development in downtown Brooklyn and in Long Island City, where the rents in Long Island City are $55 to $59 a foot, and the rents in downtown Brooklyn are $60 to $63 a foot. But a lot of those people don't want to be in rental properties. They want to own something. And so one of the trends that I think that you'll see in 2016, which hasn't really been there, is there hasn't been very much condominium development in Brooklyn. And
Long Island City.
And Long Island City. But even more so Brooklyn, because another trend that is occurring is for our entire life, everybody worked in Manhattan and lived in the boroughs. One of the reasons Brooklyn Heights was so popular was it was one stop on the subway. But one of the things that's starting to occur is you now have this live-work thing where you have development at the Brooklyn Navy Yard, you have development in downtown Brooklyn, where people actually want to live in Brooklyn because they want to work in Brooklyn. It's kind of this little bit techie, you have this major development. I mean, there are several of these, and they're not 50,000 square feet. They're 550,000 square feet. So I think you're going to see, if somebody puts a product on the market in a Williamsburg or in a Dumbo where they're selling condominiums for $1,500 a foot, for $1,550 a foot, there's a market for that.
I'm a little bit concerned about that, and I stayed in the rental market all those years, even though I did a conversion. But I think that from 2008, the world changed. After collapse of Lehman, the whole American dream of owning a home collapsed. People thought that we need to buy a home. Even with 3%, 4%, 5% equity, we want to own a home. What happened is that millions of people lost their home, and they realized that the safety is really not by owning a home, that values do not only increase, that the market can go down. So if you take all the kids that grew up in the families that lost their homes, and you have this generation that don't want to be attached to anything. The new kids that are graduating from college, they want to rent, they want to be mobile, they want to move. They don't have phones in their apartments, they don't have anything hooked to their apartment. They can move in 24 hours, and they want to be from one neighborhood to another one. And the fact is that today, we have 80% of the people in Manhattan are renting. Now, the biggest problem is that interest rates are so low. You would think that interest rates are so low, everybody will buy an apartment. The problem is that nobody has the money, the down payment. They don't because they can't save. The parents have money in the bank.
Right, but the down
and if they have
even
$1 million in the bank, they don't get any interest on the money, so they can't give it to the kids. So the low interest rates environment affecting people because they can't save. So I don't know if the momentum in America, in New York, will be to buy condos and to do condos, and people will buy. I can tell you that I have tenants that are paying from $3,000 to $40,000 a month rent, and they all want to live in a rental. They don't want the responsibility.
I think you have a certain market, okay?
Respectfully.
Okay, that's no question.
No,
but I believe what is...
The fact of the matter is, he's 100% right if you're talking about people 24 to 31 who are single, not married, and don't have children. What happens is, if you go into Brooklyn, and if you go into Queens, and you take the market that's 30 to 42 years of age, and they're married, and they have one or two children, they don't want to be in a rental. The wife doesn't want to be in a rental.
Stability, correct.
They want to pick the neighborhood that their kids are going to grow up in,
and the schools,
and they have a perception. They have a budget. There's an absolute number, whether it's X 100,000 for a one-bedroom or 1.3 or 1.4 million for a two-bedroom. The phenomenon of the city is just like there are multiple markets. So when you talk about, where's the condo market going, and
is it totally different? A couple of months ago, I did a show with out-of-town banks. And I had a bank called the Bank of the Ozarks. And prior to the show, the people called me up and they said, is there a database on how much we should lend on a certain block? We have that in our other markets. I said, guys, on the same block, you might have 8 different prices. There's no database. We don't have this database. We're not there. But I believe relating to what you're saying is, look, certain people want to be in Long Island City, but there's not enough retail. Certain people are looking, in certain cases, all of a sudden to Jamaica, which at one time was, going back when he was a child, okay, a market that had Gertz, and you had Macy's, you had all the rest. There are different markets, okay, looking at the world today. But where are the opportunities? So my question is, look, the Matone organization has a number of family members over there, the Rizzos at Briarwood have the opportunity. We know what Bruce is concentrated on, and we know what Ofer is on. Where do you see the opportunities for both of your companies?
Well, we're looking, of course, in various efforts. We're not limited to residential. We also do shopping centers and things of that nature if they present the opportunity, Bruce. If a deal comes and it presents a bottom line, we go into it. It's as simple as that. We try to concentrate on the tri-state area, within a 2 or 3 hour ride, because we like properties under our nose, so to speak. which we feel operates best for us. And it's proven itself to be pretty accurate because when you watch the cow in the eye of the farmer, it grows fat. When it's out of sight of the farmer, it doesn't grow as fat.
Vinny, in addition to being a developer, you've been a builder. And one of my buddies ran into you yesterday, and he told me that you said to him, you're busier than ever before on the development side, as a builder.
Currently, we are developing a number of properties, but as one of our construction arm is the busiest it's ever been. We have, a month, 2 months ago, started turning down new construction jobs, depending on when they're ready to start. And we find that we're working for a lot of nonprofits, some religious organizations, and we're building a lot of rental housing for these people. The other construction that we're doing, that the developers on, is rather small, and most of it in the Bronx and Manhattan.
Relating to that subject, you know, people are moving further away as long as there are transit. The Bronx, a lot of people are talking about the Bronx. A lot of people are talking about Washington Heights as an opportunity because the land is less expensive there. Have you looked at it? I mean, you still have the site on 125th Street, but there are certain sites up in the Heights and other markets, and also the Bronx. How do you see those? You don't know those.
No, I went there. I will
you
respond
went?
after. Go ahead. After
okay.
Ian,
No, let Bruce.
Well, first of all, I think one thing that's very significant for 2016 that hasn't been raised is what happens to the 421A legislation when the 421A law expires in the middle of January. Because I don't think you will see any rental construction of any sort, or very little, if there's no 421. And I don't know anybody who really has a meaningful response as to what the governor and the legislature
But I think
do.
that partially relates to Vinny on construction because, you know, it's the question of the wage scale that they're talking about, the 421As.
The wage scale is a killer right now, and the thought of converting to prevailing wages is a killer. And among the problems with that is, in addition to paying these terrifically high wages, bookkeeping personnel are increased on a job, and people have to be on a job to catalog and make sure of the number of people that are coming in every day. So prevailing wage is a problem with affordable housing and rental housing.
Which is the reason why the 421 legislation is going to lapse, because the governor sent it to the Real Estate Board of New York and said, you and the Building Trades Council figure out how this is going to work. So you have a Mexican standoff. The Real Estate Board is not going to accept prevailing wage, and unfortunately the Building Trades Council doesn't know how to sell this to its membership, even though the unions are busier than they've ever been in their life. One of the interesting corollaries of all of this is that for the first time in the history of the city of New York, 50% of the construction in the city is non-union. Now that's never happened before, and part of the also corollary of that is that you have large union companies, building companies, that are all actively pursuing, if not opening, non-union shops as well, because they're simply frightened about what happens if and when, and there's going to be a slowdown, because if land sales stop and if lenders pull back and equity is concerned about where goeth the market, and if 421 lapses, one of the things that's certainly going to happen in 2016 is that the amount of construction in 2017 is non-existent. One of the best ways to test what's going on in the world is go ask the excavation and foundation guys what their book of business is for 2017. They'll tell you nothing.
Mm-hmm. So I'm not so much concerned about the union. I've been always working with the union. I mean, if I did the job and I had to pay the price, as long as my overall construction costs were not high or my land price was not high, I was able to pay the job and get the job perfect done. So I believe that we'll be able to work it. We just need a little bit lower prices of land. But you ask about Northern Manhattan. I mean, we usually invested in the better location in the city until the opportunity came to us to buy from the hospital on 113 in Amsterdam, 1080 Amsterdam, 100,000 square feet, that it's next to Columbia University. And when we finished the job, I was really surprised that if we projected $60 rent, we were able to get 70 and 72. So it came to a one bedroom. Instead of 3,000, we got 3,800. And I saw the demand was huge. And I believe that as you have NYU that is in the village, Columbia is going to completely change and changing the area. So if you'll go from 126th Street up and towards Washington Heights and Hamilton.
I'm talking more in the Washington Heights because there are opportunities. Columbia is going up to about 130, 140.
No, up to 145. But what Washington Heights and this area have is great transportation because you can be in 5 minutes with 2 stops. You can be in Midtown in Times Square. And so I've been consistently looking in those areas. And it's very, very tough to find deals there. And the cap rates that you have to pay there, it's not as a lot better than if you have to buy in Midtown Manhattan. So at the current time, I'm able to buy in Midtown Manhattan.
Multifamily, we know the banks are there. How do you see the construction and the mezzanine financing market? You?
Well, the banks are basically, and even much of the construction financing is now coming from non-banks that are basically have large lines of credit from the banks and are in essence doing what they used to do in the securitized market. They'll make some sort of a commitment to you, then they'll go to the Bank of the Ozarks, they'll get a 50% loan from the Bank of the Ozarks at L plus 3.5 or L plus 4, then they'll wind up taking up to 65%, the last 15%, and they're getting double digits. Right. The mezz guys are all convinced that we're in the 9th inning. And they're all overexposed to, if you talk to anybody at any of the mezz funds, they're essentially not interested in making construction loans, particularly not if you're talking about condominiums.
In about a week, we're going to be celebrating our 800th show. So I hope that live and be well, all my friends come back and are healthy. My friend Mr. Joe Matone.
Thank you.
Vincent Rizzo, Bruce Eichner. Ophir Denny, and see you soon.